Hi, welcome to another episode of International Love Story. My name is Ignacio.
And my name is Christina.
On this episode, we are going to interview a long-distance relationship couple.
Jess, she's from Ireland.
And Ricky, he's from the USA.
And they both share the passion for dancing.
They met online.
In the right time. Hey guys, and thank you so much for listening to International Love Story. It's a pleasure for us to introduce you to Ricky and Jess. Ricky is living in Philadelphia, so in the US, and Jess is currently in Ireland. So, guys, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, so my name is Jess, and I'm, like you said, currently living in Ireland in a place called Cork, which is in the south of Ireland. And before this, I was actually living in London when me and Ricky met, but I moved back here in November.
And I'm Ricky. I'm living in Philadelphia, and it's pretty hot. I've been living here for about 3 years now. When Jess and I had met, she had the pleasure of coming to check out this city, and here we are.
And you do have a passion that you guys share, and this passion is
Dancing.
Yeah, we're both dancers.
Yeah.
I just loved your story, like how you guys actually met. It's just incredible, especially you didn't plan on that, obviously.
Yeah, it's I think even the two of us were surprised that we didn't meet before we actually did, because there was just so many connections and like crossovers, in the different like circles of friends or the different dance communities that we're involved in. So that's kind of something that we always joke about as well. We're like, how did this not happen sooner?
It was through one of our mutual friends that we kind of established a connection. Our friend Inga is a fellow dancer, and she sometimes comes to Philadelphia to visit. A couple of friends of mine, and we all dance and train and session and do stuff. So we decided to do a video. My friends and Inga, and we had did it one day, put the video up, and it got a buzz on Instagram and stuff like that. Obviously, all our friends liked it. Her friends liked it as well, and that kind of what started this whole thing, because then Jess ended up following all of our friends, everybody that was involved in that video. And I think after that, we kind of just aware of each other in that sense. I hadn't really still talked or anything like that, and it just a few series of different posts, kind of like cross paths here and there. And it was one post in particular that I believe Jess was talking about one of her stories, and it kind of resonated with me a little bit. And, that kind of opened up space for us to have a conversation on it. And we started to have that particular conversation. It just rolled over and kind of like snowballed into more and more conversations, and we just had been talking every day ever since.
So you guys met each other through Instagram, right? I mean, that's
pretty much, yeah. Unconventional, I know.
Right. With no intention of trying to pursue anything. It was just it was something that sparked conversation, and interesting conversation, and not too many people online that you can have a conversation with that really opens your mind up. And that's kind of what had me intrigued and hooked. I don't know if that was your game plan from the beginning. But once my mind got opened up, and then we started to really explore different topics about things that I hadn't really talked about with other people, it just was it became it became something to be excited about, like, on the daily. Like, I was looking forward to talking to this person and actually sharing and learning and uncovering different things.
So you opened up
Sure did.
Jess. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that was like one of the things that stuck out to both of us at the beginning. Like, like Ricky said, we were not like, trying to, win the other person over. Like, we were both in a stage in our lives personally where we were actually actively not wanting to date, or like not wanting to be in a relationship, and just kind of wanting to do our own thing and, focus on other stuff. And it was something about the conversations that, they went much deeper than like, surface level conversations that usually have. Like, it wasn't, I don't want to say there was no small talk. Like, obviously, it'd be like, yeah, hey, how you doing? Whatever. But then, it would always kind of come round to some sort of deeper topic, like that actually had substance, and things that were important to us, and life values, and like our philosophy and outlook on life. And just, I don't know, I felt like, especially at the beginning, our conversations took a very kind of like soulful kind of turn. And that wasn't a forced thing, or it wasn't something I was intentionally trying to kind of steer towards. It just, out of the dynamic of the conversations we were having, that's just kind of what naturally happened.
And it made you guys feel like that you definitely need to meet in person.
Yeah, I think that was like one of the major things that was like, okay, there's this person that, like, I'm having all these deep conversations with, like, they totally get where I'm coming from. Like, they understand all of these, topics that you don't normally talk to people on a daily basis about. And we have all these connections, but we've never crossed paths to this point. Like, it was this thing of like, okay, firstly, how the hell have I not met this person? And secondly, it was that feeling of like, okay, like, I really want to meet this person, because, this kind of, the dynamic that I felt, at least at that time, was like, it's not a usual dynamic that you come across very often. So for me, I was quite intrigued, like, oh, is it going to be the same in person? Is it going to be different? Because, obviously when you're apart, there's also that mystery of like, this person is all the way over there on the other side of the ocean. Like, it does add a bit of, I don't know, just like that mysterious excitement, like, the not knowing kind of feeling. So I was also intrigued to be like, okay, is this excitement and connection coming from the fact that, we're separate and we can't actually be together? Or is there like, is this actually a genuine connection? So I think that was, at least for me, obviously I'm not going to speak for both of us, but for me, that was definitely something that went through my head. Like, okay, I need to meet this person, because I need to see what it's like in, like in real life when we're physically together.
It's definitely intriguing. It's also like you were mentioning on our previous call that you both weren't looking actually for someone in the scene, in the dancer scene, right? So
yeah, I mean, we had a conversation about this pretty early, I think, when we started talking, like, our reasons for like, not wanting to necessarily date within the dance scene. And there's a number of reasons for that, on my side at least. Like, one of the things is like, not wanting to date kind of too close to home, in a sense. Like, if anything goes wrong, then it's going to be a big mess. Or just from past experiences I've had, or, there is a lot of drama in a lot of dance communities already, without adding relationships on top of that. So for me, it was just something that I wanted to stay away from personally. Rick, I don't know if you want to explain your reasons.
On my side, it was always, I just didn't, and maybe it's different like couples, but I didn't necessarily see a future where, like, me and my spouse, or who I was talking to at the time, was going to be sharing the exact same kind of world. Like I was fine with having like, my exclusivity being, in my dance, and if, my partner was going to be doing something else totally different, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like sometimes those worlds can kind of like, clash, and it wasn't even out of experience. It was more or less just like thinking about it. Like, I don't know if I really want to have someone that like in that kind of circle. But what ended up happening is like, it ended up being something pretty cool to have. I think like, once we really, got down to like, the whole dance aspect of it and the things that she would go through and things that I would go through and the conversations that we would have in regards to like specifically dance, like it was like actually a blessing to have that person there, because we like, talk each other through different things. Like, when Jess would have battles, we would like look at the footage and, we like, talk about it, and same thing for like, me here. And I was like, I don't know if I would have been able to have that conversation with a spouse that wasn't familiar with dance like that. Like they may understand on the surface level, but for us, our conversations about dance were like really deep, and it was like definitely beneficial. So like even my own understanding about like dance, and I definitely learned a few things just from having a conversation with her. So yeah, quite the opposite of what I was expecting, as far as like dating another dancer.
And
Yeah.
after a while, you also decided to see each other.
So we had been talking in October, and then I think I came to visit you in December, but I think I booked those flights in November.
Yeah. And prior to that, we had been talking about each other's like, cities and things like that, and like, like what was intriguing about it. So there was always that, that hypothetical thing. Oh, if you come out, I'd love to show you around, like kind of conversation. But that happened on both ends. And then, one day, I'm just sitting, I get a text, and she's like, asking to come see me. I was like, oh, this is really happening. Oh, yeah. I was open to it, and still even in that, like, we're talking about November, right? So it's like had been like, a little bit more than a month at this point.
Right. Spontaneous.
Stuff like that. So, there was like, definitely there was that mystery behind it. Like, yeah, I do want to know this person, but at the same time, I don't know if this person's going to be crazy. So, but I'm going to go for the factor here, and I'm, because I like, I enjoyed everything about what we were like sharing with each other. And so, for her to bring that out, say, hey, like, what about, meeting up and doing this? I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So,
if all right.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think we both did definitely have that thought of like, oh crap, we're actually going to meet each other. Like, what if this goes really wrong? Because, also like, as a woman flying out to meet this guy that she's never met before, even though he's not a stranger, because obviously he's in my community, we have loads of mutual friends. I obviously was like, okay, first of all, people are for sure going to know where I am and who I'm going to visit and all of this stuff. I'm not just going to not tell anybody.
Right.
And I have a lot of friends in New York, which is like right near Philly. So in the back of my head, I was like, okay, if this doesn't go to plan, at least I can just like, I have those people to fall back on just in case something goes, completely off the wall. Obviously that didn't happen. But I have to say, like, up until that point, like even the notion of me booking a flight to somewhere in the US or wherever in the world to meet a guy that I have not met before, like that wouldn't have happened at any other point in my life. Like it's not something I usually do. I mean, I don't think it's something that a lot of people do frequently, but like, it's there's a risk involved in that. And I don't think if this was any earlier point in my individual path, I don't think I would have taken that risk or been open to it. I think the thing that always kind of stands out about our story and how we met is that, like, I think timing is really, really important, because I don't know about you, Rick, but I believe I'm like, okay, there was so many chances of us meeting at so many other points. in, you know, our dance careers or our personal lives or whatever, that I'm like, there must be a reason that it didn't happen until it did. You know, like whether it's us having to be in, you know, a certain stage of our own, you know, individual journeys or whatever. And I did feel that, like, after I had booked those flights, I was like, who am I? Because like I would not have done this. Like even like a few months before that, I would have been like, I would have laughed in your face if you told me I had just booked flights to go see this guy I haven't met before. I would have been like, yeah, right. That is not gonna happen. But I think it was just something about like, I don't know, it was something about the dynamic of, you know, the connection and how it felt and the conversations that we were having, that I was just like, screw it. Like, you know, if it doesn't go well, then at least it's a good story that I can tell people, you know, like I'll just go for it. So yeah, so that was basically how we came around to meeting for the first time.
It's just like I have to basically calm myself down a little bit right now, because I feel you. I was in the exact same situation. I just booked flight tickets to Buenos Aires, and the way you're talking about it, all the emotions are coming up right now. So I have like some tears in my eyes right now.
You understand.
I would never have thought it. Like I would never have done it until I met this one, and I was like, okay, whatever. I just go for it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, you totally understand it.
Yeah, totally. Wow, that's like,
yeah,
through living it again.
I know. It's so crazy.
It is. Oh wow. So basically you saw each other in December 2018 the first time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how did it feel when the first time you saw each other in person? What were your thoughts and what did you feel in that moment?
Rick, you go first.
I'll set the scene for this one. Prior to us meeting, right? You know, we was, you know, talking all this big stuff. Oh man, when I see you, I'm gonna give you this big kiss and blah blah blah, and all this huggy, and you know, we was trying to figure out what that first initial reaction was gonna be. None of that happened.
Oh,
at all.
Did you pick her up at the airport, or?
She took the a flight to New York, and then she took a bus down to Philly.
All right. Yeah.
We stationed there.
Yeah.
You know, and prior to that point, we had got pretty like emotionally attached before like actually seeing each other. So there was that like, you know, emotional connection that we was looking forward to, like actually being able to, you know, express. Yeah. But you know, once it hit, I was like, oh man, wait, I'm meeting a stranger. Like so, it was like, you know, I came her up. She was texting me on the way here, on the way like to Philly. Like I guess, you know, during the bus trip, there was like gunshots or something going on.
Oh my god, yeah.
What?
Right.
Yeah. So basically, just so you can understand like the mental state that I was in before this moment happened. So I'm on the bus. I think I got a Greyhound or the Peter Pan or something. The bus, one of the buses that goes from New York to Philly. Mm-hmm. And we were in Philly, but I think we were driving through like near Chinatown or something. And like, you know, I had been like super nervous, super excited. I'm like, you know, doing my makeup after like an 8-hour flight and like spraying perfume and, you know, making myself like all nice and stuff. And then we're like stopped for a little while, and like I'm not really paying attention to like what people are saying, like, you know, around me, because I'm just like texting Ricky and like, you know, letting him know where I am and like, you know, trying not to vomit from the nerves. Mm-hmm. So at one point, like we're stopped on the bus, and all of a sudden, I don't know if it's like, I think it was the driver or someone on the bus is like, everybody get down. And everyone all of a sudden is like crouched down behind like all of the chairs that are in front of us. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And, you know, other people are like taking their earphones out being like, what the hell's going on? People are like, oh, there's like gunshots or whatever. So something was happening like on the street. Like, I don't know who had a gun or what happened or who, if anybody was hurt or if it was just a scare. Like, I don't know what happened, but like, that's my first time ever being in a situation like that. Like, And I mean, Ricky knows how I feel about guns in general anyway. Like, I'm not about like that shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I felt so uncomfortable. I was terrified. I was like, what the fuck is happening? Like, and mind you, this is my first impression in Philly, right? I've never been to Philly before. I've been to New York a million times, and
Right.
like, I've never been in that situation. So I was like, okay, what is going on? So, like, the nerves and excitement that was already there, mix that with like that situation. And I was just like, oh my God, is this an omen? Is this a bad sign? And I shouldn't be here. Is this weekend going to go so wrong? Like, oh my God. So I was freaking out. And then I text him being like, yeah, there's some sort of like shootout or something happening. And then he's freaking out because he's like, he doesn't know where exactly I am. He doesn't know what's going on. So, I mean, luckily things seemed to just kind of, I guess, calm down. I don't know what happened, like if someone really did have a gun or not, but everything calms down and then we can continue driving, and we're only like a few minutes from the bus station at this point. So I just wanted to say that, so like what emotional state I'm in when I get off the bus. So okay,
Oh,
continue the story.
And I'm in that similar like panic emotional state because now that I found out where she's at, I'm like, I don't even have time to have the whole lovey-dovey, interaction. I got to get her out of that bus station and gotta get going. So, you know, being aware that things have calmed down a little bit. I pull up, I hop out the car, I go in the station to try and find her. And yeah, she's there. And I'm like, there was that moment of like nothingness. We just look at the person like, yeah, this one girl. That's it. You know. So it was a sigh of relief to have finally seen her. We hugged, we got in the car, and and I drove her back to my house to drop the things off. Um, and I was like definitely a bit nervous, driving from the station back home, trying to make like small talk and different kinds of conversations just to, loosen up a little bit. But at that point, I was just like, in my mind, I'm freaking out, like, oh my God, she's really here. That's so crazy. But I'm trying to play it cool. So that's kind of what happened there.
like this is happening.
Yeah, like this is really happening right now. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was like, because, like for the 2 months or month and a half or however long we had been talking beforehand, like he said, we built up an emotional connection. So we were so comfortable talking to each other, and we would talk all day, all night. Like, we'd stay on the phone for hours. Like, that there was that sense of like, just, I guess, just general comfort with each other. But obviously, all of that is from a place of being physically separate, right? So, and we did talk about the possibility of it being like awkward, or that sense of comfort not initially being there because, it's the first time that we're like seeing each other. So it was like a complete contrast to, being able to talk about anything on the phone, to then like physically being in front of each other and being like super nervous and awkward and quiet. Like, after he picked me up, like, we had a date planned for that night, and I'm going to tell you now, it was the most awkward first date ever. Like, out of all of our dates that we've had, like, we look back and we laugh at our first date because we're like we barely talk. I mean, okay, to be fair, we went to a jazz club, so a lot of the time we were listening to music, but like, it was awkward as
it was an awkward setup from the beginning. I mean, like even where we were sitting, like the table's here, she's on the opposite side, I'm here, so it's like it's an intimate setting, and you can see other couples in the space, and they're all nestled up under each other and stuff like that, and here we are just sitting on the opposite sides, like, hey, what kind of food you got? Oh, you want to try this drink? Yeah, still super basic, and it was just like all that emotional stuff that we had built up was not present in that moment. At least in terms of what we were expressing to each other. I do think both of us felt internally like, man, like I said, I wish this was like a different kind of connection right now. I wish we would been able to have been, you know, a little bit more forward. Everything happens, you know, how it's supposed to happen. So it is what it is. But yeah, it was definitely like the first date. Sure.
Yeah.
How long did you stay in Philly, Jess?
I think I was just there for like 3 nights or 3 days or something like that.
Right.
Right. So like, it was like a long weekend, I think, that I went there. And like, so we went out on our first date the first night that I got there. And for me, it kind of felt like, you know, we had to go through the motions of like the first date, because once that was out of the way, like as soon as we got home after that first date, everything was fine. Then like that's when it was like, okay, like, you know, we can tick that off the list, it's done. Like, and then we actually got really comfortable with each other. But it was just that, like, I don't know, it felt like a weird icebreaker kind of thing that just had to be done and gotten out of the way, which I know is really weird because it's like a first date, you know, you wouldn't expect it to feel like that. But the situation was very unique. So yeah, I ended up staying like, I think it was 3 nights, like 3 nights, 4 days ish. So it wasn't a lot of time, but you know, it was the time that I could get off of work and stuff at the time. So yeah, it was pretty much a long weekend.
So like in February when Ricky came to London, you were officially a couple already, or were you just still dating, getting to know each other? How did it develop, especially when you left to London again, Jess? Like, what did you kind of agree on? Did you know when you're going to see each other again? What was the deal between you?
Rick? Me? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So on the last day or the second last day, I think, when I was in Philly, one of those days, so we were like just chilling in his room, like, you know, not really doing anything. And I think Ricky actually brought the conversation up. He was kind of like, so what do we do? Like, you know, like, okay, so we met, like, you know, what's like, what do we do now? And it was funny because I think the conversation that we had, we were both kind of like getting at the same thing, but also slightly looking at things a little bit different. Like for me, I think for both of us, we felt like, okay, like we've been talking for a while. We've been built up this like really awesome connection, you know, like we're emotionally kind of attached, for lack of a better word, to this person. Like, you know, we felt some form of like investment in this person. Like, you know, like we didn't want to just like stop. Like, you know, we felt like, okay, this is something that we want to kind of explore. But we did realize like, okay, we've only seen each other once and it's been for like 3 or 4 days. Like we realize how crazy it is to jump into a relationship right now. However, that's exactly what we ended up doing, because I was of the kind of perspective of like, I obviously take, you know, committing to a relationship really seriously, but not to the point where I feel like, you know, if it turns out to not be right, like I don't feel locked down to that relationship. You know, you have a conversation about it and, you know, it either works or it doesn't. So that part didn't scare me too much. I would have preferred to take the risk in jumping into it and it may not work out than to kind of be in a gray area. Because especially with distance, I feel like you need some sort of like clear cut, like, okay, this is what the situation is, because being long distance adds so many other like complex layers and things that you have to deal with, that I feel like if there's not some form of a commitment and you are both not super clear on what page you're on and that it's the same page, like I feel like it could get a lot messier. Ricky was more on like a slightly different kind of outlook on it, but I think he felt more of a risk in, I mean, you can say in a second if this is wrong, but from what I understood, what he said to me was like, I think he was scared of risk on the other side of the coin. Like he was scared of going for it and then it being more of a loss if it doesn't work out after going for it, rather than like not putting an official stamp on it yet. I don't know. Is that kind of what you felt, or?
Gosh, yeah, that's it. In a nutshell, I look at it differently because I was like, once you put that label on it and you start operating as a couple, obviously you're still learning each other and learning about each other throughout the entire process. But I also think it's a commitment to move forward in life together, kind of, you know what I mean? And when you start doing those things, you start to have the other person in consideration. And at that point, I was like, we're still trying to get to know each other. So we don't even know each other to like a certain extent of like how far we're willing to go for each other, down the line. And that's kind of where I was at. I was like, well, what happens if one of us actually ends up turning out to be crazy? And now here we are, like, in the train this way, like someone's got to jump off, you know what I mean? Or someone's got to like, pull brakes on it. And for me, sometimes I just feel like it's a little tougher to get out of those situations when you're like kind of invested that way, because you start to build things to establish a stronger like connection and bond. And sometimes, that can be hard to like, work away from when you're like actually committed. But you know what? She's a pretty good debater. And at the end of the day, what she had to say, I was like, I couldn't really deny. And I was like, oh, right. So I agreed. At the end of the day, it was a new perspective and understanding on it, and it was the risk of like jumping in that I was like actually kind of like scared of, and she's just basically saying, "Come on, jump!" Like, all right.
I remember I was like, "Listen, like we're not getting married right now. Like we're just like making a commitment to see where this goes. Like like for me, I don't want to say like." I didn't take the label of a relationship as seriously. Obviously, I do take it very seriously, but the way I was looking at it for that unique situation, I was like, well, like, like, I couldn't tell where it was going to end up, right? I didn't know like, oh, this is going to be the person I marry, or this is going to be the person like I'm going to be with forever. But I knew I wanted to find that out. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to see, okay, what is this connection? Is it long lasting? Is it just like, like a short period thing? Like, is it gonna like phase out? Like, I had enough of a interest in, everything that had happened between us that weekend to just kind of like say like, let's just do it. And, if it ends up that we break up, we break up. Like, it's not, I don't think I was as scared of that possibility happening than Ricky was.
Yeah, sure.
But you made him jump into it as well.
Yeah, well, I suggested that he
jump.
jump.
Yeah, because then it's gonna look bad. Like I just got dragged into this thing. Like that's not the truth. I jump too. It just took some push. That's it.
Yeah.
But you could think about it this way as well. Like you were getting to know each other for like a month and a half already. So besides, getting to see each other and to be together.
And Jess was crazy enough to get the flight ticket and visit you in Philadelphia. So that's a good reason to jump into it.
Yeah.
So cool. So, and then in February, you saw each other again in Ireland, right?
In London. I was still in London at that point. Yeah.
For how long did you stay?
That was another extended weekend, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Our work schedules at that point were, pretty tight, and it's not usually when I leave work for something, it's always been for like a dance related job. So I'm used to going out a couple of times, and my job understands that. It's kind of tough to sit there and say, hey, I'm going to go, find my love across the ocean. If you don't mind letting me off for a few days, I would love it. Right. So we definitely had to like strategically plan our trips around like, our work schedule, things like that to make it work. So a lot of our visits were like extended, like, weekends or a bit like 3 or 4 days. So that's kind of what the situation was in London when I went in February.
Yeah. And is it right that you also met each other's family already?
Yeah,
I had met Ricky's the first time I went there.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, like, I was so nervous because before I even got on the plane, like one time, right, Ricky called me up because sometimes he used to like call me to wake me up as like my alarm clock because he would be working at the time that I need to get up. So
Yeah.
he video calls me this one morning and it's like, I have to ask you a question. And I was like, oh no. I was like, what's he going to ask me now? He's like, so, like when you come here, like, like, how do you feel about meeting my family? And I was like, because I'm like, I haven't even got there yet. And I'm like, and also I know that he's super like, not private about his family, but like, he doesn't bring a lot of people around his family. I already knew that just from, talking to him. So I was like, what? So I had agreed, beforehand, like, yeah, sure. And I was like, wow, like, he wants me to meet his family, like on the first trip. Like, is he sure?
Yeah.
And I remember I was like, my palms were sweating, my heart was pounding. Cause like, I mean, if you know Ricky, like he has a big family and like they're all super close knit. And I was like, it's not even like, oh, he's just introducing me to his mom. No, the situation was, where do we go? Like Red Lobster.
Red Lobster.
No, it was supposed to be me just going to the house, like a total chill, like, like informal situation. That is not what happened. Like, it turned out to be like a whole big family dinner at Red Lobster. I was like, I was not like mentally prepared for this. I'm like, oh my God. And then I get there and one of the first conversations they talk about is football. And I'm like, I know nothing about sports. Like, I'm getting into basketball, but like football, I was like, how, like, I couldn't even like come up with something to like contribute to the conversation. I was like, oh my God, they're going to hate me.
Oh, but they didn't.
But they didn't, no.
Family is very open and welcoming. And when it comes to like bringing people in that, that I have like, love interest in, like I'm very careful with that. So I like bring around my family, like she said, I don't bring everybody around, and not everyone can have that privilege. But I think such a great impression was made. So from the beginning, I was like, this is definitely better than any person that's around here right now. So I think it's worth it. It's worth it. I think bringing her out to see my family, and like I said, they embraced it. They loved it. They thought she was awesome. As I told her that they would, because she was definitely nervous about how that was going to go, and I reassured like, yo, listen, my family's cool. Like I said, if I'm with you, they're going to love you. You'll be all right. So it was a good experience. It kind of set the tone for like every interaction after that. Like every time I'm over at my family's house or something like that, they're either asking about Jess or obviously like video call Jess, and they're excited to like check on her and say hi and speak to her and talk to her. So it's been like that all the time. It's almost it's pretty much like she's part of the family. Like they treat her like that
from the beginning.
Yeah. So it did go well. Like, I feel like I was probably nervous for like no reason, but yeah, like I think it went really well. So by the time he came in February, I had met his family, but my family are all in Ireland. And one of my sister is in Canada. So at this point he hadn't met any of mine. I had just met his side.
So you met his family the first time you basically visit him. You, Ricky, went to London in February 2019. And then you saw each other like during weekends from time to time on several trips, like basically traveling around. So the last time was February, which is like 6 months already, half a year. How are you holding up so far?
Like, I think this is probably like one of the bigger challenges that we've had because, the distance itself, like, honestly, has not been a huge problem. I'm not going to say, there haven't been problems because distance itself will always add, you know, its own agenda of things. Like, it will make a problem that would have been easily solved if you were together, like a big, huge thing just because you're apart. But I think it hasn't been a fundamental thing, or at least not up until this point, because, we were quite good with making travel plans. Like, it would be every 2 to 3 months would be our usual kind of like, you know, time span in between. Um, and I think for us, I mean, 6 months is like long for us. It's long for anyone, but I think, like we had a conversation the other day and we're like, yeah, this is definitely past our kind of like, maximum time that we're comfortable with doing. And I think that, like being honest, it is, adding like a whole host of like unique challenges and like things that we've not really like struggled with before, like usually we're pretty good with like keeping things like exciting and fun, even if we're apart. Even in those 2 to 3 months where we're apart, where we get quite creative with how to like still kind of date each other when we're not physically together. But like on top of not being able to travel, like we've also been like, I know we're not locked down right now, but lockdown was in place for so long that like we also can't really leave our house. So even like getting creative with like long distance dates is super hard. And, when all of the other aspects of our individual lives are on pause, it also means like we don't have other things that, outside of the relationship that we usually talk about and catch up on and ask advice on and all of that kind of stuff. And it does really have an effect, I think, at least on like the dynamic of the relationship. So I think that's definitely been a struggle for us, is like, okay, like how do we manage not knowing, when we can see each other again? Like, how do we stay connected, but at the same time kind of give each other space to like keep the excitement going? Like I feel like it's been a really hard balancing act.
I think this was like about a month ago. We had a conversation. It was like, yo, like what's going on right now? Because there was definitely something internal that we were feeling that was different than before, and it almost felt like a kind of like a disconnect. In some senses, like because we were kind of going through the motions. As far as like what's going on in the world, we don't really know. Like, we're uncertain of like, when this is supposed to end, or even when the opportunities for us to travel going to open up. And then on top of that, trying to figure out when we're going to see each other. Like, this is always a benchmark. There's always something to look forward to when we were like, plan a date. And here we are just kind of like in limbo, waiting for an opportunity. And in doing so, like, we kind of just created a kind of a bit of a routine for ourselves that just was like, kind of static for a while. We just kind of just stayed here. And, the creativity kind of wore off a little bit. There were things that we would, always do. Our Fridays would be our date nights. And, we try and spice it up whenever we could. That was a consistent thing. Our regular, like, talks throughout the week would like consist of us kind of just being on the phone, sometimes not even really like engaging with each other. It's just like just the idea of me doing my thing over here and her doing her thing over there, but us just still kind of like being together. That was part of it. We like would work out together. Every once in a while, we got a chance to like do yoga with each other and stuff like that. So we try to make things happen in light of the situation. But when you are doing that on a consistent basis and you don't have anything else to look forward to as far as like actually being with the person, the novelty of all those things kind of wear off a little bit. And it just got to a point where it was like, okay, like, what are we doing? Like, how are we like truly feeling inside right now? And it was nothing that either of us were doing to like, change those feelings. It was just the nature of the situation is like really affecting like us mentally a little bit. Because we were trying our best to make things work. Any kind of way we could spice it up, without going into too much detail. I was really trying to like, keep the fire lit. And that can be up to anyone's imagination.
I love how honest you are.
Yeah,
no, but you're right. You don't have this physical like touch. You need not seeing each other only via FaceTime or you desire each other. So that's just part of it.
Yeah, and it definitely like it allows me to like work on my stripping routine a lot more than normal. We step my game.
You are too funny.
Trying to keep it like keep it together. So all those things, it's like we had to have a conversation and look at it like how can we pull ourselves through this? What can we do to like at least get us to the point, to that next point where we actually see each other and hope that like our connection is like kind of reestablished and like and is like re-strengthened, because we realize that as proud of us as I am, like that we're like overcoming a lot through this distance thing. Being able to see each other is part of like our relationship. It's part of like the strength of our relationship. Like being able to see each other is what makes our relationship strong, even if it's only 2 or 3 months at a time. Being able to have that is what like is definitely a driving force in us keeping our like our connection strong.
I mean, what is your plan in general? So you're planning on hopefully seeing each other in November again, and on the long run?
So ideally, we would love to go to Vancouver for that Thanksgiving weekend. If not, because it also depends on, the border situation with Canada, because they're meant to open this month, but, everything is subject to change. So we just have to wait and see. If that doesn't happen, then I think Ricky's going to come here for a long weekend instead, and just, I guess just be on lockdown with me, because anybody coming into Ireland has to self-isolate for 14 days anyway. So even if he just comes for a long weekend, then he still has to basically stay in one location. So, it won't be as exciting as being able to go out and like explore and adventure, but, at least we'll be together, which is the important part. So that's our plan now. And then I think we're kind of waiting to see what happens globally as well in around November time. Because usually what we do is we'll kind of have an outline for our year, like January to December. Like we tend to do that at the end of the year before. So we know, okay, these are the times in the year when we're kind of aiming to see each other at least. So I'm resistant to doing that anytime soon, just because it's been very annoying us making plans and then it all getting cancelled because of the situation. So I don't want us to be like any more disappointed than we kind of have been this year. So I think we're going to hold out and see how everything goes in November, like whether it's Canada or whether it's here. And then we're going to try and, I guess, plan more trips.
And then eventually, depending on how things are going to develop,
then eventually, it will probably be me moving to the US, because, we talk about this a lot and we go back and forth and we like, go through like the pros and cons and everything. That's what we're leaning towards, because it makes more sense for me to go there than for him to come to Ireland. So that's kind of our long-term goal. We haven't put an exact timeline on it because, you know, I think I mentioned this to you guys before. We're also very careful of, like, you know, me especially, like my kind of personality and my tendencies, I'm very goal focused, and I always look to the future a lot, and I'm always like, I'm a like goal oriented, like I'm like I kind of overachieve a lot of the times. So if we have this goal that's set in like a solid timeline, for me, I get too caught up in like, okay, what do we need to do to get there? And it takes me out of the moment of like right now and, you know, like everything we're experiencing at the moment between us as a couple. So we purposefully, we did actually have a timeline, and then we took it off because it was putting too much pressure in my head. I was like, you know what? Having a strict timeline is not working for me. So let's take that off. So we have a timeline, but we haven't actually set like, you know, we have a goal, but we haven't set a strict timeline for it, if that makes sense.
Makes sense. Totally. I
Yeah.
completely understand you because I'm actually the same. And it's great that you recognize that this is basically taking somehow away what you're feeling right now, so that you're not in the current situation. You can't feel it 100%.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
You did great by taking off this pressure from your shoulders, because
I will say,
feeling.
Ricky wanted to do that initially, but I wouldn't listen to him. And then when I was like, maybe we should reconsider this timeline thing, he was like, yeah, about time, Jess.
Yeah.
I was like, sorry, it just took me a while to catch up.
Yeah. That's the best thing you could do right now. I mean, it's easy for me to say it, because we're living together. But I definitely understand you. So it doesn't make sense at all to set a timeline and not being able to fulfill it, especially in a situation like that. And what I've learned the past few months, living with someone who has another background, like who's, he's Argentinian, you just have to be flexible and take things one time.
One step at a time.
One step at a time. Thank you. So even though if you want everything in that moment, you need to learn, like, basically to let things happen in order, first of all, to enjoy them, but also being open towards what's going to come.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that's something we're also conscious of because, you know, like obviously we have an ideal picture of where we want to end up, but we're also very aware that, you know, when we see each other, it's for long weekends at a time. We feel like, I always say, like, we never get to be normal with each other. Like, you know, we never get to have that like everyday experience. You know what I mean? So that's, you know, another reason, like exactly what you just pointed out. That's another reason why we kind of said, okay, let's not put an exact timeline on it because, you know, we might need extra time anyways and opportunities to experience those things that we don't normally experience on like one of our trips, you know? I don't know if there's anything you want to add about that, Eric.
I mean, kind of hit the nail on the head with all that, to be honest with you. I kind of feel the same way. And it's just, that's kind of the thing that, you know, we've come together on a lot of those, like, you know, on those like philosophies and ideas on, you know, going forward and planning. Definitely was like thinking like, you know, we definitely should slow things down a little bit. There's definitely pressure. And in regards to that, like, you know, some things when we talk about, we kind of end up flip flopping. So, you know, where that whole idea of having a timeline, you know, thing came from Jess, it definitely sparked something in me that had me thinking, oh, wait, maybe we do need something like a timeline. And I was like, so now we're off. So now I'm here, like, I have this idea of a timeline in my head, definitely not as, like, you know, crazy as hers, but a certain sense of, like, definitely working towards something. And and doing it in a time where it's like, we're not spending too much time in this space either. Like, it's not like, the clock is kind of on, but it's not. I don't feel like we have to move just for the sake of like moving, but I feel like we have to move for the sake of not wanting to continue to be in this space. If I can, like, I don't want to rush it, but I would love to be in a situation where we're living together sooner than later. I know there's definitely a handful of things that have to happen emotionally, and us just getting comfortable with each other for us to get there. But that's kind of what I'm pushing towards now.
Well, we have to see what happens. We're gonna like kind of have a reevaluation, I think, in November of what our next steps are, because initially this year I was supposed to go to the US for 3 months so that we had that time to kind of, have a long period of time together, like get into some sort of a routine. Obviously, I wouldn't have like been able to work or anything. But the whole, one of our goals for this year was to give ourselves that opportunity. Obviously that didn't happen. So I think in November we kind of have to, when we see each other, we're going to discuss, okay, do we shoot for another like 3 month period? Do we do like 1 month? Do we do like less trips, but longer time, like, a longer length each time? We haven't exactly figured out like the details of that, but I do know that, we definitely need some sort of like extended time together in order to have, to give us the opportunity to get to that kind of picture that we have in our heads, I think.
So step by step, as we said.
Yes.
November, and then you'll guys see where this is going to lead. And
yeah, I think the most important thing, like, there's kind of one other couple in, I think, both of our lives where, they've been through the whole long distance thing. Like my older sister, she lives in Canada. Her husband lives in Canada now, but he was living in Australia when they started dating. So, she's kind of been through the whole long distance thing before me. And I think we lean on them a lot when we have a challenge or a difficulty with regards to, the reality of doing it. And I think, anyone doing long distance, like, I do believe it can work. I mean, growing up with my sister, I mean, she's living proof, but, it's something that, I genuinely do believe it works. But, there's a lot of factors to take into consideration. Like, I do think it has to be a temporary thing. Like, it cannot be a forever thing. Like, it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? So I think, people like the two people in the relationship have to really be on the same page and be wanting to get to the same destination. And I think one thing that, helps me and Ricky is like, we talk about everything. Like, even when I'm feeling like, if I'm struggling with the distance or something and I'm scared of telling him that I'm struggling, like, and he always kills me. He's like, why don't you just tell me this stuff? Like, why do you keep it in longer than you have to keep it in? But like, when you are that honest with the other person, like, I think it does so much good for the relationship, because even if we don't have an immediate solution in that conversation that we have, I always feel better, like, knowing that he knows where I'm at and I know where he's at. And like, I don't know, I feel like we do genuinely make like a really good team. Like, we're good at like solving things and overcoming things. And I think, if you're doing long distance, I think that kind of team aspect, or almost like the kind of the solid friendship that you have in the relationship, I think you sometimes need to lean on that quite a lot, because that can also, get you through the times where you can't always have like, all the romance and the excitement because you're so far away. So at least I found that helps for me anyway. Rick, I don't know how you feel about that, or
So like the aspect of team is like it took on a whole new meaning when we got into our relationship and stuff. I really understood like team is really being able to hold each other up because there's been times like where I've had my weaknesses and I think I've always felt like I needed to be strong all the time and I didn't really know how to properly lean on someone to help them, or to help me out. And, and just kind of like let me know it was okay to do that. And in doing so, like I found like so many more strengths in her. And I value her a lot more, in seeing that. I'm like, wow, like, she's really like, I always knew she was an amazing woman, but it just put so much more emphasis on that, on what I'd already like knew. And I think that's been a thing that pulled us through this entire distance thing in general. Just being able to keep ourselves like mentally like, motivated and always like working. It helped when we think about like, our goals in the future, cause there's like an established sense of trust. Like, I can count on this person to like, I look forward to the future and she knows me to be like, this wildly optimistic person a lot of times. But even on the back end of that, there's sometimes like, there's doubt that I have or I had in the past. But, knowing that, as a team that we're as strong as we are, is that the adversity factor in terms of like, trying to plan around like, distance and uncertainties and things like that. It seems a lot more feasible to achieve the goals that we want, knowing that, that person is just as strong as I need to be in my relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So you learn that you don't have to be the strong part all the time.
Right.
So you rely on each other, and when you're weak in one moment, Jess is strong for you as well, and the other way around. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But it's a learning path, definitely a learning curve to get to that point. And you have to know each other very, very well to basically also, because it's trust and you have to build trust. And you got to that point. So
yeah, I think where we're at now, we have a very good level of trust. Obviously, that came through a lot of work to get there and a lot of like, things we had to overcome individually and together to be able to, get to that level. And I think sometimes it is hard to build that, in a long distance relationship when you're so physically separate from the other person. But I think, even in the times when it's hard or in the initial stages when, you're just beginning to build that, I think, just pushing through it and getting through it can actually like do a lot, rather than just kind of giving up because like you don't see a clear cut like path of, okay, yeah, I can see how this is going to like work out and be fine. Like sometimes you just kind of have to push through it. And I think we've done it. Obviously, trust is like, it's a lifelong thing. It's not just like you build trust and then it's there forever. You have to keep it there. It's like a practice that goes on forever. But I do think we've done like a fair amount of, building that kind of foundation to get to this point where we're like, okay, like, there's a solid sense of trust there. And I actually think like even in relationships that I've had, that weren't long distance, like that hasn't been there in every relationship, so I think it is possible. It just takes a lot of effort.
That's for sure. And as you said, it's something you work on during the whole relationship, and also knowing that the other person is trusting you 1000%. This is a feeling like, at least for me, I can't describe it, because I know whatever, this guy is going to be there and I can totally rely on him. And as you said, at least I didn't have it with anyone else before until I met him. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I feel it's about having each other's back and empowering one another as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a lot of like respect for each other as well. And that like learning how to respect that person and how to love that someone, because sometimes we have this idea in our heads that this is what respect looks like and this is what love looks like and this is how I love somebody. But then you also have to take into consideration how that person wants to be loved, not just how you feel like, oh, but like, I do X, Y, and Z and like all of this stuff, but that might not be the best way to show that person in particular like love and affection. I think everybody has their own way that they like to be, respected and loved by their partner. And I think we spent a lot of time learning each other in that sense and knowing how to, respect and love the other person in the right way for that person.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of International Love Story.
We hoped that this story helped you guys. We know the current situation isn't easy at all. So if you were able to close the distance already, just contact us via Instagram or Facebook. It's International Love Story. We would love to feature your story to give other couples in long distance relationships hope. And yeah, have a great rest of your week. Please take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Enjoy your night.